This week, we're talking about plenty of Linux on ARM news, and particularly about Qualcomm and some potential fallout from Qualcomm's purchase of Arduino. And there's plenty of news about Valve and Steam, and Blender 5.0 is out. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 230, recorded Saturday, November the 22nd. Bake the man a pie. Hey folks, it is Saturday, and you know what that means. It's time for some Linux. We're going to get geeky with software and hardware, probably some gaming, all kinds of good stuff. I'm your host, Jonathan Bennett, and I've got two of the regular guys with me. We've got Rob and we've got Jeff. Welcome, each of you, to the show.
Yes.
Love being here.
I am the good-looking one, Rob.
I was thinking about it. I don't know that it's fair to call either of you regular guys. We're all a little off the beaten path in our own ways.
Okay, let's not get too deep into that.
No need to get pedantic.
Indeed. All right. So there's been some things happening this week. And we were talking about this a little bit before the show. Rob had a story, and I stole it from him. So we're going to talk about that here shortly. But there's some interesting news with Qualcomm. Of course, Qualcomm making big moves in the open source world. Rob, what do you have that Qualcomm is up to?
So there is quite a bit of Qualcomm news out this week. Some good, some bad, and some ugly. For those who don't know, or maybe know but are unsure, maybe you're confusing Qualcomm with Broadcom or some other comm out there. Qualcomm, they are the ones that brought us the ARM-based Snapdragon X1 Elite processors, along with other Snapdragons before that and stuff. But the chip, this is the chip that is supposed to compete and maybe be better than some of the Apple M series processors, according to some. But, well, it's kind of hard for me to get a good feel for it, as officially there have only been Windows-based X1 Elite devices released. There is some Linux support there, but, nothing being sold on the market, and I don't know how ready it is. So, but still, that hasn't stopped me from being excited about the opportunities in our ARM future. So, with that, last year we announced that Tuxedo Computers teased plans for releasing an X1 Elite Linux laptop. I did because I thought this was awesome. They had warned us, but then after that, they warned us earlier this year that there have been some obstacles slowing them down. But even as recent as just earlier this month in November, they posted the latest Linux DT patches for their ARM laptop. And with things looking like things were still moving forward. So, it seemed like it's all going to be all good. But this week, they announced they're discontinuing the project, noting challenges with the architecture, the first gen X1 not being as suitable for Linux as expected, and just not seeing the benefits as we kind of thought with ARM. Things like when you have ARM, you think long battery life, and apparently that just really wasn't there for them. So I guess it's goodbye to the X1 plans, but they have left open the possibility of an X2 in the near future. And the fact that X2 was just announced, I believe, in September and coming out soon, the fact that that's already coming pretty soon was another reason. It's just time to just discontinue this, and maybe we'll try again with the next iteration. So it seems this time around they're not going to make this one. Maybe X2. But now Qualcomm itself seems to be off to a good start with their X2, maybe making the X2 a little more of a Linux contender. Because as already they've been upstreaming initial GPU support for the Snapdragon X2 Elite in the Linux 6.19 kernel. The pull request also brings Arduino 612 GPU support, quad pipe support in the DPU driver code for allowing higher resolution displays, display port improvements, and other changes. So, that's kind of, there's also some good news about Dell is releasing a laptop this week with the MPU, actually releasing this laptop with Linux on it before they're releasing the Windows version. Other than that, I'm not going to go too deep into that story. I was going to, but afterwards I decided it didn't seem all that as exciting as initially. But it's nice that they're bringing something to Linux before Windows. So anyway, that is the good and the bad. But I can't even talk about the ugly. So it's just too much for me. So I'm going to leave that part of the story for Jonathan.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the ugly and how ugly it may or may not be here in just a minute. The Tuxedo Computers thing with the Snapdragon X1, I gotta say, this is almost directly tied to how quickly and how well the Snapdragon is supported upstream in the kernel. Like, that's almost entirely what this is. And it's just kind of a sign, hopefully this is a trend, that you can't just release a device and throw some patches out there for a 10-year-old kernel and expect everybody to be happy with it. It's not going to work. People want to be able to run their mainstream distros and their modern kernels, and the old approach to this is just not, it doesn't work. It's not tenable. Nobody wants it. So
sounds like they had problems with just getting it to work, right?
I'm glad they actually called themselves on it and said, you know what, this is a dead end. We can't keep going down this path, and didn't try to release some subpar product. So I mean, it's maybe not happy news that it's not coming out, but it's at least, hey, we're adhering to certain standards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, otherwise, it could be like the first round of Windows on ARM devices that totally flopped.
Yeah, it went well. Yeah. But I mean, so the Tuxedo thing, so let's look at it. What are they talking about? Well, long battery run, the batteries are not lasting long enough. Okay. Well, that's directly tied to like how efficient the computer is and how well it handles sleep states. Both of those are how well the processor is supported on Linux. BIOS updates. We know that there are ways to do BIOS updates. It's just apparently missing for either this particular chip or ARM in general. Good USB 4 transfer rates. Again, probably not a hardware limitation. This is probably a driver limitation.
Or the BIOS, I suppose maybe Qualcomm isn't maybe providing the means to have it through Linux.
Yeah, it may be a licensing issue there, right? So this is not in my mind at least. This is not a problem with Linux on ARM necessarily. This is a problem with Qualcomm support for Linux.
Mm-hmm. So. And hopefully, with their jump on the X2 stuff, maybe that means they're gonna try a little harder next time.
Could very well be a different story there. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the ugly with Qualcomm. You may have seen it. It is. It got called out by Adafruit Industries, who I'm a fan of. At least I like their hardware. I've done a lot of work with their hardware over the years. But this is a story from It's Foss, and it is as we put it on the TWiT network, the in-certification of Arduino. It says, the in-certification of Arduino begins. Qualcomm starts clamping down. And it's all about changes to the Arduino terms of service and privacy policy. And what is changing? Well, the new policy introduces sweeping user license provisions. It broadens data collection, particularly around AI usage, and it embeds long-term account data retention. Continue reading the article. Section 7.1 of the new terms of service grants Arduino a perpetual, irrevocable license over anything you upload. Your code, projects, forum posts, and comments all fall under this. This remains in effect even after you delete your account. Arduino retains rights to your content indefinitely. If you can't if I'm not being sarcastic enough for you to out to pick up on it, I think we're a little overblown here. So I did something. This is radical. I actually went and read parts of the terms of service.
Nobody does that.
I know. And it's not as bad as it sounds. Okay. So the 7.1, the actual publishing of content, what it actually says, without prejudice to any ownership rights of user of content, which is defined below, which user publishes. So the content which user publishes for the purpose of allowing the functioning of the platform and the services, which includes the forum and the project hub, user grants to Arduino so here's the grant, the non-exclusive, royalty-free, transferable, sub-licensable, perpetual, irrevocable, to the maximum extent allowed by applicable law, for the duration of intellectual property rights and without detriment to user statutory rights, right to use the content published and or updated on the platform, as well as to distribute, reproduce, modify, adapt, translate, publish, and make publicly visible all material, including software, libraries, blah, 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 or other data, collectively, the content that user publishes, uploads, or otherwise makes available to Arduino throughout the world using any means and for any purpose, including the use of any username or nickname specified in relation to the content. Should the content be software created by the user pursuant to the contributor license agreement, such content shall be subject to the terms of the contributor license agreement. User expressly acknowledges that content may include users' personal data, where applicable, personal data of minors for whom the user is legal guardian. And if you are not familiar with actually parsing legalese, that may sound terrifying. But this is really sort of just boilerplate for, hey, we're running a cloud service. You give us data that is intended to then be publicly viewable. We want to make sure that our license says that when you give us data, we can make it publicly visible. This pushes back against a couple of things, like the right to be forgotten. I personally have opinions. I am not a fan of the right to be forgotten because that's not actually the way the world works. And it seems that the new management at Arduino is attempting to take that same stance. And then there's a second part of this that people really might look at and be really, really worried about. There's a clause that says that users are not allowed to reverse engineer or attempt to understand how the platform works. Okay, now, what is the here's the question. If you read this, here's the question that you have to ask yourself, particularly if you actually click through and look at this, because in the terms of service, that word platform is capitalized. How the platform works. Well, in legalese, when you see a word capitalized like that, that means it is a special word that has been specifically defined somewhere else in the document. All right. So if you actually go back to the beginning of the document and you ask yourself, what is this platform? Well, it will tell you it is the Arduino forum, the Arduino blog, the Arduino user group, it is their web platform. It's not talking about the platforms of the individual pieces of hardware. It is their online services. And so the terms of service says you don't get to reverse engineer the Arduino online platform. And I think that's already illegal in a lot of places, but it's also just bog standard terms of service. With the publishing and the ownership rights. So here are two things to think about with that. And it comes down to licensing, open source licensing. The first thing to think about is this: at least in the United States, when you write something and you don't put a license on it, do you know what the copyright terms are by default? All rights reserved. By default, you get copyright on it. And so if someone does not put a license on it, technically, then Arduino is not going to have the rights to reproduce it. And so there has to be some sort of copyright grant. There has to be some sort of licensing that by default will allow someone to that will allow Arduino to even publish these things that people give them to publish. The one thing in reading through this, I've took a little bit more time in reading through this. One question that I have, one thing that it seems to do is if you publish something under the GPL, this seems to remove some of the restrictions that the GPL would put on it. It would make that more permissive than the GPL would, because it gives Arduino the rights to use it aside from, so essentially it's dual licensing. Is essentially what's happening. If a user uploads code, it's under the GPL, you upload it to Arduino, you then give them this separate license. Dual license code, Arduino has more rights than anyone else using the GPL. The question that I have about this is, how does that work when one user uploads code written by a second user that is GPL'd? Because I do not have the right to relicense someone else's code. That's not the way copyright works. Nor does Arduino have the right to relicense that code. And I can't make this grant. So a lot of this is, again, it's just legalese boilerplate that I'm sure the Qualcomm lawyers, their legal team said, oh, this does not sufficiently protect us. We need to strengthen the copyright, the licensing stuff in this. But I'm not sure how that works with the GPL with other code. Like, I don't think it does anything. Obviously, there's more in here. I've not read the entire terms of service, and there are things in here I'm sure are not amazing, but I don't think it's quite worth the pearl clutching that we've seen so far. It seems to be a little bit blown out of proportion. As I said when discussing this with a buddy of mine before the show, I call it 50% fake news. What do you guys think?
I'm glad you read that, because all I heard was blah, blah, blah.
All right. If you zoned out with the actual legalese, you can come back now.
I read through a lot of corporate contracts, and yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, it sounds pretty boilerplate to me, and I'm not intimate with all that stuff, but there's a lot of terminology that sounds really terrible, and it's like, no, here's what this actually means, and it's pretty benign, pretty standard, protections.
Yeah. So the way this goes is, like, if you were to put it into just normal English, then a lawyer could take it to court and sort of rip it apart. Like, they use these particular terms on purpose because they have actually stood up in court. That is how these terms come to be.
Yeah, I think they should change that. They should fix that somehow. Stuff should be readable.
Good luck.
Yeah, it kind of is the same with audit standards.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm auditing Jonathan and I tell him, you should do this, that's totally optional.
Yeah.
But if I say you shall, it's not. And it's like a whole separate language of what words mean. And you say, oh, it's XYZ. And it's like, okay, this is not what it means in like the audit world or the legal world. Here we say this in the real world, but it doesn't you have to kind of translate to, because it's a partially different language.
Yeah. Not a Linux problem, but I still think somebody should do something about this. I don't know what, just something. I mean, they're supposed to be smart people. They go to years and years of college. Somebody should. Well, that's what they're doing. They're protecting their years and years of college.
Yep.
Wait till the AI lawyers hit.
Though they've already hit. Yeah. They have. Basically, not a week goes by that there's not some story about somebody, some lawyer getting rebuked from the bench because they sent in some sort of writing they sent in, and it's either obviously AI or it's just straight up hallucinating court rulings. Like, oh, well, according to Johnson v. Caperno in 1932, that doesn't exist. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, that's now. Give it a few more years and that stuff's going to start. And it wouldn't surprise me in 10, 20 years we have, I'm trying to do this basic thing. Oh, okay. Here's your AI lawyer. Whoop, there you go. Here's your...
Yeah, 20 years. So you heard it here first, kids. Don't go to school to be a lawyer.
Oh, that's not what we said. That may be the advice to give, but for very different reasons. Oh, goodness. All right. Jeff, let's talk about something a little bit more, one, interesting, and two, upbeat and happy, rather than terms of services and legalese. Let's talk gaming. What's going on there?
Yes. So Steam has just got a brand new legal contract. No, I'm just kidding. Steam has just released a major update, and they're switching to the Debian 13 libraries for their runtime. Now, before we fully unpack what that means, let's talk about how Steam works at a high level. You know, when you look at it, Steam needs to run in a lot of different environments, from an old Ubuntu LTS to bleeding edge Arch. It does this by having a set of libraries it uses, which are not dependent on the base distribution. The special library stack that Steam uses is the Steam runtime. Basically, it's kind of a container that games run in. Now, old games have older versions of the runtime, and newer games run in newer containers with the newer libraries. Basically, kind of matches when the games came out to the libraries that were in use when at the time. You know, and I know some are asking, how does Proton fit into all of this? The answer is Proton runs inside the latest runtime environment to translate the Windows games to Linux commands. And I'm only saying commands to keep it simple because they're low-level kernel and graphic commands and API translations, and you know that it all happens, but it isn't the focus of today's article. We'll just leave it commands. Now that we know how the pieces fit together, we can get to the story, which is Steam released version 4 of their runtime. Now, this is a pretty big jump in library versions, and this is why it caught my eye. Runtime version 3 was based on Debian 11. Now, runtime 4 is based on Debian 13.2. So this means there's a 4-year jump in the libraries. And there are several which have gone 64-bit only. And, you know, as more and more as Debian steps away from 32-bit. So it's just the natural progression of the libraries over the years. Because of this, some libraries have a new SO name for breaking API compatibility. SO name, so SONAME, is a field of data in a library which is often used to show version backwards compatibility. For instance, if version of this library 1 through 1.9, you know, of the, we'll say, libx shared library provide identical interfaces, they'd all have the same SO name. So it'd be like libx.so.1. If the application binary interface of a library changes in a backwards incompatible way, the SO name would be bumped or incremented. So it would go from libx.so.1 to libx.so.2. So, you know, there because of the huge jump, there's some interface, we'll say hiccups. I won't say maybe total breakage, but there's some things they got to iron out a bit. And when I say a lot of libraries have gone 64-bit only, the only libraries which remain 32-bit in this runtime are the ones needed by Proton or other Steam tooling. You know, the article linked in the show notes actually comments they hope that this soon leads the way to 64-bit only version of Steam. And, you know, personally, I think it's coming as more and more libraries drop 32-bit support. I mean, it's 32-bit's going away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we see this as a large release. In the GitLab release notes, which are linked in the show notes article, does say that games require this branch can't yet be released. But they do say there's a procedure which is going to be similar to the release of version 3. So I won't go into all the details, but in that GitLab, they talk about how to backport. There's a guide for game developers and a lot of the underhood documentation. So while we're not going to see games running in version 4 just yet, it's coming, and we should see more in the coming months. So take a look at the article linked in the show notes for more details and for a link to the release notes. From there, you can see the wiki with an overview of the different versions and how the entire Steam stack works and what they use native and what's in the runtime. And I just got to say, I love gaming on Linux.
Yeah. It's great that it works as well as it does. So name or SO name, it comes from the .so, the shared object files. So it's the shared object name. That's what that stands for. A couple other interesting things. Yeah. What is going to happen with the entire back catalog of 32-bit games when Steam and all of our distros go 64-bit only?
Well, the way it's working now is they just run on an older runtime. Mm-hmm. So they have that runtime frozen at certain libraries. So when you have, this old 32-bit game, it's got to run on Steam runtime version 1 or 2. So they should still work. Everything should be fine. It's just that it's in that container. Mm-hmm. And I use the term container loosely. It's probably the best way to think of it.
It's like half of a flat pack.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are libraries that have to run native, and I'll talk about that in my next story. But for example, one of them is anything related to the kernel, like a GPU driver, because it's so tied to the kernel. You can't have a frozen library, because then you can have incompatibility between really old driver and really new kernel. Yeah, the APIs could have had a change in there. So certain things have to be native. That's
part of where things like that SDL2 compat comes in, because SDL, one of the things that SDL does is it handles some of those talking to your video card drivers, but also it handles input and output. And that's one of the things it does. It gives you this layer so that games written against that older stuff can run against newer things.
Yep.
Pretty useful. All right. Do we want to move on? Actually, no. We're going to move on here in just a second. We're going to talk about Windows, ARM, and Linux. But we're going to do that right after this.
Hi, I'm Leo Laporte, host of This Week in Tech and many other shows on the TWiT podcast network. Can you believe it? 2026 is around the corner. So this, my friends, is the best time to grow your brand with TWiT. Nobody understands the tech audience better than we do. We love our audience, and we know how to effectively message to them. We develop genuine relationships with brands, creating authentic promotions that resonate with our highly engaged community of tech enthusiasts. Over 90% of TWiT's audience is involved in their company's tech and IT decision-making. Can you believe that? 90%, 88% have actually made a purchase based on a TWiT post-read ad. No one comes close. We're the best at this. As one TWiT fan said, I've bought from TWiT TV sponsors because I trust Leo and his team's knowledge of the latest in tech. If TWiT supports it, I know I can trust it. You cannot buy trust like that. Well, actually, you can. You can buy an ad on TWiT. All our ads are unique. They're read live by our expert hosts, Micah Sargent, me. We simulcast all during the shows on our social platforms, so everybody can be watching live. One of our customers, Haroon Mir, the founder of Thinks Canary, he's been with us since 2016. Since 2016, he said, we expected TWiT to work well for us because we were longtime listeners who, over the years, bought many of the products and services we learned about on various TWiT shows, and we were not disappointed. The combination of the very personal ad reads and the careful selection of products that TWiT largely believes in gives the ads an authentic, trusted voice that works really well for our products. 10 out of 10 we'll use again. Thank you, Haroon. We love you, and it's been 9 years. That's the proof, right? Partnerships with TWiT offer valuable benefits, including over-delivery of impressions. You get presence on show episode pages, so there's a link right there that our audience can click on. We're in the RSS feed descriptions, a link there too, and social media promotion. Our full-service team will craft compelling creative to elevate your brand and support you throughout your entire campaign. I work on the copy myself to make it authentic, to make it real. If you want to reach a passionate tech audience through a network that consistently over-delivers, please contact us directly. partner@twit.tv. That's the email address, partner@twit.tv. Let's talk about how we can help grow your brand, or just go to twit.tv/advertise for more information. I look forward to working with you. Thanks for listening.
More Linux on ARM news this week comes from the Crossover team. And in the show notes, I call this the Windows arm of Linux or something like that. So anyway, thanks to people like Jeff Massie here, our very own Jeff Massie on the panel, being a paid subscriber to Crossover or contributor. I don't know how he pays. He pays him something, he says. I've heard him say that.
I'm a paid subscriber.
Paid subscriber. I can't remember how their paid contributions work. But thanks to people like Jeff Massie, who is a paid subscriber, Crossover has been able to do some amazing things with wine, or at least their crossover version of wine, which makes it into wine eventually anyway. And honestly, I don't find much use for wine anymore these days, as there are so many good alternatives. But sometimes there isn't. Sometimes you gotta use it to get something done. So for those moments, wine has been there to run Windows apps on Linux. But that was only for like AMD Intel users, the x86 64 guys. For those in the ARM world, we didn't really have a lot of options. All we could do is find alternatives, and even that was a struggle sometimes if you didn't have the source and it wasn't compiled for ARM. But Codeweavers has been building up Wine's ARM support for quite a while now. Wine 8 laid out the groundwork. Wine 9 added support for native Windows ARM binaries and emulated 32-bit code. And early next year, Wine 10 takes the next big step, emulating 64-bit x86 code. So in plain basic language, that means a lot more Windows software and games can be run on ARM machines under Linux. So to see what their code could really do, Codeweavers tested on a beast of a machine. They tested on a System 76 Thelio Astra with a 128-core Ampere Ultra Max CPU. That is an ARM CPU with an NVIDIA RTX 4060 Ti. And on that rig, they saw Cyberpunk 2077 run around 120 FPS. And Hades 2 and Path of Exile 2 around 60 FPS. And Ghosts of Tsushima around 50 FPS. Now that doesn't mean you can take Ken's dusty old Raspberry Pi and suddenly it's a 4K gaming rig, but it does show that ARM Linux can be a serious gaming and workload platform when paired with the right hardware. And gaming's only half of the story. Codeweavers is also targeting enterprises that want to move Windows workloads to Linux for better security and less bloat without rewriting every app from scratch. For companies buying high-end ARM workstations, powerful compatibility layers like this can make that transition much more realistic. And, hopefully someday for those not buying these really high-end machines, it can be useful for us too. As announced last week, Valve is coming out with their frames, which is an ARM device. It's going to run Steam. So there must be something good going on there. So anyway, with more capable ARM laptops and desktops arriving sometime in the future, hopefully, Linux has a real chance to ride that wave and with better ARM support of its own. From Ubuntu's generic ARM installer to this evolving Wine crossover stack. If you already own Crossover like Jeff and have an ARM64 Linux machine, I don't know what Jeff has, but if he has one, he could sign up to test their preview build. And so can you, if you fall into these conditions, and help shape what Windows on ARM on Linux looks like next.
Fun.
I do not have ARM hardware.
Not even a Raspberry Pi?
No.
Really?
Get the Pi 500 and try this out.
Yeah, we got to send Jeff a Pi of some sort.
That's like about the same price as your Crossover subscription anyway.
Bake the man a pie for Christmas.
I like pecan pie.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. So there's a bit of related news that I've got. Why are all my stories related to Rob's stories? We did not even plan this. But Igalia, yeah, that's where we're at. Igalia actually has a blog post up that pulls the curtain back just a little bit and lets us see the man behind the curtain. That Igalia has been doing a lot of work on these Valve announcements that we just got. So the new Steam controller, the Steam machine, the new Steam frame as well. I believe that's what they call it, the goggles. Igalia has been doing some of the things for that, and one in particular that caught my eye is Turnip. Turnip is the driver for that Qualcomm Arduino GPU, and they have been working on Vulkan support for that. And I think, did we call this one? I can't remember if we talked about this back when it first happened. The guys may be able to help me remember. Back when we talked about Turnip last time, did one of us say, "Oh, getting support for it, Valve must be planning something"? That seems like a thing that we would have said.
I don't remember Turnip specifically, but I know we've said lots of times on the show that Valve must be planning something.
Yeah.
It's been pretty obvious. Well, this is another one. I don't know if we read these particular tea leaves or not, but we get a little look behind the curtain here that Igalia did the work to make Vulkan happen on these GPUs, specifically because this was coming from Valve, and I found it pretty interesting to read through.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, because if you think, what has Valve really gotten into? They're of course the desktop computer, but they're getting a lot into like the handhelds, the glasses, the small stuff.
Mm-hmm.
x86, way more powerful, but it sucks a lot of juice, and you just can't. It's not a good fit for these little handhelds.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think, well, okay, you have 720 screen or maybe a 1080 screen, you're not needing super power. And if you say, well, we don't need 300 frames per second, we can run on these little handhelds, sell a bajillion of them,
mm-hmm.
which Steam loves because it opens them up to a lot more market share. And it's good for Linux, for getting out in the hands of more of the general public.
And you say that, they don't need that power soaking up because the x86 takes more. I still think today, at least most of the time, maybe we're starting to finally pull away, but I think most of the time when they do build an ARM system that's actually has the power of an x86, the power usage tends to go up pretty close to the same. But I think maybe we're starting to pull away with that a little bit finally.
Yeah, I mean, I see a couple things here, because one is the powerful ARM systems like the one in your story, Rob. I mean, that's a lot of cores, and you have to have software specifically written to take advantage of that parallel computing, which a lot of software isn't. It's designed for 4 cores or 8 cores, maybe 64. I mean, a lot of software is not designed for 100 plus cores at once. And the other thing is, I know, and I have mentioned this before, Intel and AMD see this problem coming, where they're trying to make their CPUs more efficient, and we're going to have to see if the next, this next generation isn't. It's too soon. It's already in silicon. They're testing it, but on the roadmap, 3 to 5 years, are they going to start cutting things out to better compete?
Is that their big core, little core idea? Partly. Well,
and getting rid of 32-bit code, and just go, we're going to streamline. Then we need less silicon for all the interpreters, because a lot of times now the CISC x86 instructions, complex instruction set, is interpreted down to RISC, reduced instruction set commands in the core. And if you start going, we're not going to support as much, takes complexity out. And then you say, well, we're not going to have hyper-threading. That makes them simpler. I've seen some papers saying that they could make x86 power-wise efficient, like some of these ARM chips, but they have to cut some things out and make it more like a
Yeah, well, I mean,
chip.
in a very real way, x86 hardware, it's not x86, it's emulating the x86 instruction set. Like that's
Right.
true on a fundamental level now.
So
And
Yes.
yeah.
AMD and Intel would have to agree on this, right? Or one would
Yeah.
be moving away and it'd be different, and they wouldn't be the same competing things anymore.
Yeah, they would agree on it. There's actually and we did a story, I think it was about a month ago or so, 2 months ago. There's actually a consortium to map out the future, the x86, and like Linus Torvalds is on it too. There's other big companies in there to go, okay, we need to make changes and map out the future of this.
I'm glad they have somebody on the board that's willing to tell them when they have stupid ideas.
But one of them can't just, one of those guys like Intel can't unilaterally say, we're just doing this. I mean, they can, but it would.
I mean, that's where x86 64 came from. Or AMD came along and said, man, Intel, your 64-bit platform is stupid. We're just going to go make our own. And they did so well with it. Intel eventually came along and said, we want to make those too. Forget the Itanium. We're going to make that too.
But if they cut those out, like the OSs would have to be made for that. And then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
obviously.
But I mean, Linux is already going that way. We're getting rid of 32-bit anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could follow along pretty good, which is, I guess, all we care about.
Yeah. And
Who cares
the
about
problem
those other guys?
Yeah, and I mean, they tried to
compile
do it with
another kernel.
They tried to do it with Titanium, but part of the problem there was it simplified the chip, but the compiler was so complex and how it ran, it had a lot of issues.
I guess one of them could easily just
out.
do it and say, this is our new thing. It's better. And, just come on, Microsoft and whoever else, just compile for it and you'll have a much better world.
I think the problem is they're too evenly split, and you just bisect the market. And I don't think either company wants to be on the losing side of that and try to play catch up. So I think they're going to work very hard to say, you know what, we're competitors, but we have a bigger threat looming on the horizon with the ARM and chips like that.
Intel could offer both, and then if it's really that great, ARM's going to say, or AMD is going to say, well, we want to do that too. And then everyone goes there.
Couple things. One, Rob, that is very bold of you to put Intel in the leading spot in that discussion.
I just picked one for.
I don't think Intel is going to be the lead on that one. Intel right now is just trying to hold on to anything they can.
But adding another chip like that, that's a whole, you have to have a whole complete design team doing it, all the testing, the layouts, it's like, oh, well, they could just feature another one. That's millions and like $100 million probably.
Is that different than just changing to it though? I mean, wouldn't they have to do all that anyway if they changed over to it?
They would, but if you have the old style and the new style, every rev has got to go through all designs. They're probably shrinking things, so they're doing new and different layouts and tweaking the layouts, optimizations of the layouts. Then you've got to build it, fab it, and then, oh, wait a minute, we designed it this way, but we can't actually physically build it without some tweaks. It's a big deal. And then all the testing you've got to do to find out, well, we say it can do this speed. Can it really do it? How much overhead do we have? And then you do advanced degradation testing. So if I would
think if one of them, let's say AMD, thought that this was just going to be better, that maybe they would want to do that because they figure if we get a jump on this, that's going to be our competitive advantage, and Intel's not even going to be able to catch up.
It's possible. Yeah, but it's a huge gamble, though.
Yeah. So they're trying to do this lockstep so that they can compete against each other and while crushing the competition.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of Pepsi and Coke going forward and saying, well, we don't always agree, but we got to make sure like RC Cola and Shasta just don't get their time in the sun.
Yeah. All right. So there's one more thing from this Igalia article that's really interesting that I think maybe some more Valve tea leaves we can read. In the first paragraph here, it talks about the 3 new devices coming, and then it says, successors to the highly successful Valve Index and Steam Deck. These devices are set to be released in the coming year. I don't think any of these 3 devices are successors to the Steam Deck.
No.
So I think Igalia knows something here that they are not intentionally telling us. I'm thinking about this, and there was a comment from a Valve engineer that said that they've looked at doing a new Steam Deck, and they've not yet found anything that gives them the leap in battery performance that they were looking for. So I suspect, let me put it this way, I would not be surprised if, yes, the next Steam Deck was an ARM device. Probably very similar to the Snapdragon that's going to be running inside the new Steam frame. I could see a rev of that as a new Steam Deck. So there you go. You heard it here first. Only reading the tea leaves, no inside knowledge, just looking at what's out there. But that's what
our prediction episode is coming soon.
yeah, for sure.
Don't forget that one.
Indeed. All right. So here in just a second, Jeff is going to tell us about some next-gen GPU stuff coming from yet another player. We'll get to that right after this.
Hey, everybody. Leo Laporte here, and I'm going to bug you one more time to join Club TWiT. If you're not already a member, I want to encourage you to support what we do here at TWiT. 25% of our operating costs comes from membership in the club. That's a huge portion, and it's growing all the time. That means we can do more. We can have more fun. You get a lot of benefits, ad-free versions of all the shows. You get access to the Club TWiT Discord and special programming like the keynotes from Apple and Google and Microsoft and others that we don't stream otherwise in public. Please join the club. If you haven't done it yet, we'd love to have you. Find out more at twit.tv/clubtwit. And thank you so much.
So in the last story, I was talking about Steam runtime versions, and I mentioned some things are in the runtime container and some things are native. One of the items that are native are the GPU drivers, because how they're tied to the kernel, and they don't want to get a conflict with different kernel versions. This leads us to the next story, where AMD is getting their driver ready for the next generation GPU, whatever that might be. Now, I say whatever it might be because a while back, we covered how AMD went to a block-by-block enablement strategy. The way this works is new features are put into the block, and I mean just that in a conceptual way, like a little function or block of code. And when the driver boots, the GPU says what features it supports and enables the blocks it needs. Now, just because a feature block is there doesn't mean the GPU is going to use it. Part of this was done to simplify the driver stack and make it more universal, and the other was to add new features well ahead of hardware release. But we don't know, and more importantly, their competition doesn't know what the new GPU is going to do feature-wise. So now the article mentions that with the new patches going into the code, into the driver code, we don't know if this is going to be an RDNA 5/UDNA or an RDA4 refresh. No matter what it is, the code is starting to flow. So AMD's preparing for the next hardware. Like, for example, the PSP block was updated, which is the platform security processor. Basically, they updated the code, which handles a lot of the security-related tasks. The interrupt handler also had an update, and this controls interrupts for the GPU. The graphics memory controller got some love, along with the graphics hub, GFX hub, where it went to 12.1. Now, here's where it gets funny. Version 12 is for RDNA 4 GPUs, so a 0.1 it could mean a refresh for RDNA 4. It's only a 0.1 bump. But that's just speculation on my part. And the new compute cards, though, like AMD's AI industrial type cards, they only need version 9 of the block. So maybe there's going to be a new block with more compute silicon on it. And here's where my theory, or what I envision, kind of falls apart. if we look at versioning history, though, RDNA 1 was version 10. RDNA 2 was version 10.3, and version 11 was RDNA, and version 11 was RDNA 3. So you can't read too much into the patches because we've had major revisions with a 0.3 and major revisions with an entire whole number increment. Now, the article does go on to say because of the way the new blocks are chosen by the GPU, we really don't know what's coming. When they used the code names of the past, we could determine by which code paths were enabled what the card would do and have a good idea of its use case. These patches are not going to make it into the 6.19 kernel. Hardware rumors have the cards coming out in about a year, but that's internet speculation, so take that with a big grain of salt. Though really, the timeline kind of does make sense. If we get into a release kernel in January, if it makes it then, that would give AMD and their partners time to test the hardware and the software to find any bugs, so when it's finally released, they can have a spotless launch. But, testing times will vary on how much of a change the hardware and software is going to have, how confident they feel in their testing, meaning that they think they need a lot, or the process is slow, or they feel confident and don't need a lot of time. And in that case, we'll see the hardware a lot sooner. Take a look at the article in the show notes for full details and links to the patches so you can see the header files for yourself. I say header files because a lot of the code is auto-generated and too large for the mailing list. There are paths you can go to see the full code, but it's big. More and more, hopefully gaming goodness coming our way in the near future.
Yeah, interesting stuff. We have switched places. It's Rob's fault. It's Rob's fault.
I don't know what happened. It just dropped for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, I heard the donk that you came back.
Yeah. Rob went donk. There's a show title.
Oh boy.
Someone capture that, please.
Yeah. I was thinking the something about the code flowing. But yes, the code must flow. That one came to mind too as a show title. Yeah. No, it's interesting to look at this and try to figure out like how far in the future each of these things are and what exactly they represent. It also made me wonder, like, are the RX 9000 cards actually available for purchase now? And it looks like some of them are. I'll have to look a little bit closer at these and see if any of them are worth it. But they're in stock in a few places. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, and the speculation is, it's threefold, right? It's a refresh of RDNA 4. Mm-hmm. It's RDNA 4 with an APU in there so they can do more AI stuff. Mm-hmm. Or 3, it's RDNA 5 or UDNA because they're going to the unified device architecture, whatever they're calling it. So it's they're combining their paths with the compute cards and the graphics cards into kind of one driver stack.
Yeah. Time will definitely tell. All right, Rob, it looks like you want to talk about Wayland.
Yeah.
Rob always likes to talk about Wayland.
I do.
It's his thing.
Wayland Windows, the letter W.
This show brought to you by the letter W.
So, yes, I have another Wayland success story. And yeah, listeners of the show will know that I am a Wayland advocate and love to bring Wayland success stories to the show. Even if sometimes they can be translated into maybe Wayland weaknesses. So I'll just get it out front because unfortunately, remote desktop solutions like TeamViewer, AnyDesk, RustDesk have been one of those weaknesses up until now. So, Wayland's been their weakness, but RustDesk has been carving out a space for itself as the open source answer to TeamViewer and AnyDesk. And its latest move really leans into that reputation, especially for Linux users living in the Wayland world, which is everybody, I hope. Everyone should be on Wayland. So at its core, RustDesk is a remote desktop tool written in Rust under the AGPL 3.0 license, and it runs pretty much everywhere: Linux, Windows, Mac OS, Android, iOS. But The newest nightly build brings something that's been a long-standing pain on Linux, and that is proper support for multi-monitor setups with different scaling factors on Wayland. So, I guess if you've ever tried to remote into a remote machine, with say a 4K display at 200% scaling, and next to it is a 1080p monitor at 100%, you've probably seen the chaos. The mouse pointer doesn't line up with the, where you're clicking. Input lands in the wrong spot, and the whole experience quickly goes from remote desktop to remote frustration. So for a lot of people, mixed scale monitor setups on Wayland have basically been unusable for serious remote work. Rust Desk developers say they've cracked that. Their implementation now handles these mixed scaling monitors configurations correctly, and they're claiming to be the only remote desktop solution that does this on Wayland right now. That puts them a step ahead of the big commercial players like TeamViewer, a paid product. At least they really try to push under for commercial use. AnyDesk, Splashtop, and the rest like that have all been pretty slow to tackle Wayland. Wayland's quirks, especially, once you throw in like high DPI and multi-monitors into the mix. So for the moment, this support lives in Rust Desk's nightly builds on GitHub, where the latest code lands every day for early testers. Once it's been, hammered on, tested out, and proven stable, the mixed scale multi-monitor support is expected to roll out to the regular stable builds, and you'll find on Rust Desk's official site, making life a lot nicer for Linux users with modern Wayland desktops. And one less reason for you guys out there to say, I'm not going to Wayland yet.
One less reason. Yeah, there for a little bit, I was a little concerned about Rust Desk. There was some rumors about like what they might be up to, but I think it's fairly safe to say that they're good players at this point. The fact that it's open source makes it at least more trustworthy than any of the closed source alternatives. The TeamViewer and all those guys. It's like you don't know what's going on under the hood there. At least with Rust Desk, you have some semblance of a guess. You can figure out if it's doing anything weird.
Yeah, I mean, you can use their server for the proxy or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I guess in that case, you don't know what's going on, but you don't have to use their server. You can put your own server.
Absolutely. All right. So up next, we're going to talk for just a bit about, open source at Microsoft. A bit of unexpected open source news, and we'll get to it right after this.
Hey, everybody, it's Leo Laporte. Are you trying to keep up with the world of Microsoft? It's moving fast, but we have two of the best experts in the world, Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. They join me every Wednesday to talk about the latest from Microsoft on Windows Weekly. It's not a lot more than just Windows. I hope you'll listen to the show every Wednesday. Easy enough. Just subscribe in your favorite podcast client to Windows Weekly or visit our website at twit.tv/WW. Microsoft's moving fast, but there's a way to stay ahead. That's Windows Weekly every Wednesday on TWiT.
All right, so the news is Zork. Zork 1, Zork 2, and Zork 3 have been released as open source by Microsoft. And you may have questions. I certainly did. Like, wait a second, I thought Zork 1, 2, and 3 were already out there, and Microsoft? So, here's the scoop. The source code for Zorks 1, 2, and 3 were out there, but without an official license attached. So it was in sort of that no man's land of it's available, but nobody was willing to actually package it up like officially because it doesn't have a license. It was just sort of a wink and a nod. It was released. Well, there's been work to say, let's put an official license on this. And then you have to ask the question, who would actually own the copyright to be able to assign a license? And the answer to that is because of corporate acquisitions, it's Microsoft. So Zork was written by Infocom, and Infocom was purchased by a couple of different studios. I'm trying to remember who was in between. Activision, right? Activision was another one, I think.
Activision got them.
Activision bought Infocom, and then Microsoft bought Activision. Yeah, that's the way. That's the way that it went. And so Microsoft ended up with the ownership of the Zork source code. And finally, somebody, whoever it was, needed to, signed off on it. And we now have Zork 1, 2, and 3 out there under the MIT license. And interestingly, this isn't this source code drop does not actually include any source code. It's just the official blessing from Microsoft that says, yes, this is available under the MIT license, which is great. Now, the thing that you'll probably see as a result of this is it'll start to be available in places like Fedora as just being able to install it straight off. There's now no license questions. It's all just in the clear and open source. It's been out there before now, but for the purposes of playing it, but also just preserving these things, I'm glad to see Microsoft do this. And there's about 1 million other software titles that this needs to happen to, because the statute of limitations, the length of time that copyright lasts for, is just hilariously too long when it comes to software. It's like 70 years plus the life of the author, which software is so ridiculously out of date after 20 years. But anyway, good for Microsoft for at least taking this step. And like I said, hopefully we'll see it for other titles so that these things don't disappear. That's really the danger.
Refresh my memory. I'm pretty sure you've done a tip on this game. This is a game, right? These are games, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And are these the text-based games, or is this?
They are text-based, yes.
Okay, I want to make sure that I had that right. And everybody else who wasn't sure. So Zork is a text-based game.
Yeah, it's the original adventure.
Yeah.
This is you find yourself in front of a house and there's a mailbox. It's that game.
So I first played this on a Commodore 64, and the older people, so anybody born 2000 and later, you don't understand the impact of this. So early 80s, you're playing this game and it just has a prompt. You're standing in front of this house. You could type one of multiple things. It wasn't multiple choice. It was like you were having a conversation. It was like a fake AI. Now, they just had specific keywords they went off of, so it wasn't like an AI, but it felt like it, because you could say, well, I want to open the mailbox, look up, look down, go north, sing a song, and it would have responses to all those things. And it was amazing technology at the time, just how you interacted with it. So there's a lot of people, that are older that played these years ago, early 80s, that these were amazing, and that was back when, games were basically 2D, Space Invaders, Pac-Man, things like that. So there wasn't a lot of deep logic in them. There are probably some exceptions, but for most of them, they were pretty straightforward. So this one, with all the possibilities, and it was kind of felt open world, it was amazing.
Yeah, I remember something similar, like a chat base. It seemed like AI, where you could chat with something and it somehow had answers for everything. So, similar lines has answers for everything. But I wonder if I could go to an AI, say ChatGPT, and say I want to play a unique Zork adventure with you, and you be my thing, and just like play in there. I wonder if you could somehow prompt it to. I don't know. That's real AI, not even just pretend AI.
I saw. Oh, dang it. I was going to sign into my Steam and not signed in on the phone either. Oh, well, that was a nice idea while it lasted. One of these Zork games, there's actually a 3D recreation of it. And I am not able to immediately find it because I'm not logged into Steam on any of the devices I have in front of me.
I can tell you that the Zork 1, 2, and 3 are available in the AUR. And other places too. I played it before, under the wink and a nod type thing. And if you want to get just an easy on Steam, I think it's on sale now for about $3. You get Zork 1, 2, 3, Zork 0, Planet Fall. I think there was another one in there. It was about 5 or 6 games for like $3.
Indeed. I'm trying to remember.
Some reason I think like you brought the graphical one. You showed us the graphical one, I think. I feel like you showed us the text-based one, and then like the week later you showed us the graphical, unless it was something else.
I'm not sure. But the one I'm thinking of is like Adventure, the Underground Empire or something like that. I don't know. It's a fragment of a memory, and I can't bring it up at the moment. Yeah, the Underground Empire. That's what it's usually called. Huh. I don't know why I can't find it on Steam. The new 3D version of it. I have it on my wish list too. I just don't have, like I said, I'm not logged into Steam.
Well, I was wrong. It's the Zork Anthology on Steam right now for $3.89.
That's not too bad.
No,
but
Zork
you can get
1, 2, 3, Beyond Zork, Zork 0, and Planetfall. If you want the pre-packaged, you don't want to go through any install,
Yep. There you go. Yeah, we'll talk here in a bit about some other options to get it if you don't want to go through Steam. Coming soon. All right.
AUR.
Well,
which I know what you're hinting at, and it ties in with mine as well.
He's trying to steal my thunder here. All right, Jeff. Before we get there, there's a pretty big release that just happened. What's the new thing? Also in 3D graphics, believe it or not. What's new there, Jeff?
Well, now that we have some updates to Steam to play games, we have GPU Love coming to play games. Well, maybe. And now maybe we need to make a really cool game, and we can do that with Blender 5.0, which was just released. Oh, okay, maybe you need to do some work with it as well, but it's not as fun. I don't know as Blender really needs an introduction, but just in case anybody is not familiar with Blender, it's a free and open source 3D creation suite. It supports the entirety of the 3D pipeline, so modeling, rigging, animation, simulation, rendering, composing, motion tracking, video editing, and game asset creation. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for 3D. Now, version 5 brings support for showing HDR colors and a much wider range of colors. So it goes without saying, you're going to make sure, if you're going to want to do this, you're going to need a monitor which can support HDR. You can output it, but if you can't see it, it doesn't do you any good. You are also going to need to be running Wayland and the Vulkan backend. So this is another switch to Wayland that Blender 5 is not going to do you a lot of good on X11. There's a lot of focus on color for version 5 with a lot of different parts of the program supporting HDR, wider color palettes, and HDR is supported in both static image and in video. So no matter what you're doing, you're going to get more colors and better ways to play them. They've done things like revamp the curves drawing feature, which supports the new curves object type, and there's a new geometry attribute constraint. There's a new cylinder option for displaying curves, which allows for rendering thicker curves, and you won't have them look like a flat ribbon. The look of the program changes as well because there's a lot of different parts of Blender that had changes, updates, and overhauls. And they have bumped the GPUs needed to run version 5. So if you're on NVIDIA, you need 900 series or newer. And for AMD, you need the Radeon 400 series or newer. Basically, for AMD, you need GCN version 4 or newer. I'm not even going to try to cover most of the changes because there are way too many. And I really do suggest you take a look at the article in the show notes for more details. After you have read the article, look for the link to the Blender website, and you will find where they have version 5 release notes. But in these notes, there's a lot of graphical interaction. So these aren't your standard release notes. They have several images rendered with a feature with a feature on and a feature on in the old way, and a slider so you can drag an image so you can see the changes and how they affect an image. They have a lot of examples to click and drag to get a good feeling, so you can really understand it. They have some where you click and you swap between static images so you can see the changes. They have a link in there in the release notes to free demo files, so you can have a lot of things to play with if you're just getting started. So you get a lot of objects and things like that. Included in this is a human base meshes asset bundle, which they've updated with a few fully realistic skeleton assets. So you'll have full skeletons that you can play around, and so you're not just trying to build a square and do stuff. You have actual things you can play with. Now, all the assets are public domain, so you can use them in your projects, private, shared, commercial, however, without any issues. After you've downloaded those, so you can play with them, keep scrolling, because that's not the end of the updates. And this release is massive. I suggest people get this update and start playing, because Blender can be a lot of fun, and it can even be used to benchmark your system. They have a whole benchmarking suite and places you can upload benchmarks so you can compare how your system does to others. But most of all, just have fun creating.
Yep, absolutely.
I'd like to emphasize one key point that you kind of brushed over real quickly, and that is, if you want the full suite of features, if you want to take full advantage of it, you got to be on Wayland.
Is there new Wayland only stuff there?
HDR?
Blender
the HDR. You have to have Wayland, and which I did say in the show note. Rob was dozing.
Yeah, I heard you said it, but
he's that age. He dozed off sometimes.
I heard you say it. You just really went through fast. You got to emphasize the important things like that.
And you have to run the Vulkan back in. So you need Wayland and Vulkan, both of them, to make it work.
All right.
To live long and prosper, you need both of them.
Yes. All right. Here in just a second, we're going to get into our command line tips. But first, a quick break. All right. Rob's got our first tip. What are we looking at today, Rob?
All right. So this tip is for those like Jeff. If you guys noticed, he has some Apple AirPods in his ears. So people like Jeff, there you go. So for people like Jeff trying to use Apple AirPods on Linux, I've used them in the past, but at one point I was having problems basically connecting to my Bluetooth. So I just stopped using them, haven't even tried in a long time. Well, this tip doesn't specifically, it may or may not fix that problem. I don't know, but maybe it will. Maybe it'll resolve that problem. But anyway, my tip is LibrePods. So for those watching, I made a nice little background, LibrePods. AI made this nice background. So LibrePods is an open source app that basically frees Apple AirPods Pro from the Apple ecosystem and lets you use their smart features properly on Linux. So out of the box, AirPods Pro on Linux works like a planned Bluetooth earbud. You just pair it with Bluetooth and you get audio. But you don't get any of the extras. No active noise cancellation, no transparency mode, unreliable battery reporting, and no ear detection. But LibrePods fixes that. So LibrePods is a Rust-based desktop app for Linux with an Android companion that reverse engineers Apple's protocols. So it could talk to AirPods the way macOS and iOS do. With it, you could switch between ANC, transparency, and normal mode right from the app. See accurate battery levels for each earbud and the case, and depending on the model, you get extras like ear detection. So if you take one out, it'll know. Head gestures, conversational awareness that lowers your volume when you start talking. And it runs in the background to handle things like auto pausing, like when you take the earbud out, like I mentioned. And it's still under active development, but AirPods Pro 2 are fully supported. The Pro 3s, I don't know which ones you have, Jeff, but the Pro 3s they're almost there. And older models at least get a solid battery and basic control support. I haven't tried this yet. I've only read up on it. and it sounds like something I'm going to have to try because hopefully having a companion app's gonna make the AirPods support all, but I don't even know what kind of AirPods I have. 2 or 3 probably. I don't know. But yeah, so for those trying to use it, this app could make things a lot not nicer for you.
Yeah, very cool. Jeff is busy now looking into it. Like, ooh.
Yeah, it's pretty active development. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, it's not just one person hammering on it. It's several people.
Yeah, and I guess, for like Asahi Linux, you can get a Asahi Linux on your Mac, and then you can just have that whole ecosystem but in Linux. Mac hardware, all Linux. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like having a book in Chinese, translating it to English, and then retranslating it back to Chinese or something? No, it's pretty cool. I've had them work flawlessly with Linux, but yeah, I don't have any of the other features. It's just basic volume control and stuff like that. I can't see the battery life or anything. So I'm going to look into this and find out how I get it on a cache.
Yeah, let us know next week how it works for you. If I don't get to try it first.
Yeah, very interesting. Now I'm down the rabbit hole of looking at earbuds. Not Apple earbuds, not my style, but looking at earbuds. My poor budget. You guys have gotten me to look at video cards and earbuds. That's like $500 that you two have almost talked me into spending.
You're welcome.
This little tip got you into looking at earbuds.
Yes.
Well, if you buy earbuds or a video card, I'm counting that as your Christmas present. So
the problem is, Jonathan, all we have to do is like briefly like mention something like, what? I don't have that.
No. I am the victim here. Do not put this on me.
What? I don't have that yet.
All right.
Jonathan's wife in the comments is saying, yes, you need to buy this, honey. I love you enough that you need to.
No, that is not what she is saying. She is saying, I love you enough. I'm not going to let you do this. That's what she is saying. All right. Let's talk about Paru. I hope that's how it's pronounced. Paru, whatever it is.
I think Paru.
Paru. That's what I was going with.
I don't remember what it is.
What is it, Jeff?
So Paru. So I'm learning a lot by going to an Arch-based Linux after years on the Debian side of the house. One of them is Paru, which is basically it's a new AUR helper. So the Arch and Arch distribution and my distro, CachyOS, which is Arch-based, use Pacman to hit the official repositories, but it won't hit the Arch user repository. Reason being, the packages in the AUR are in the package build format, PKG-BUILD format, which is for people to be able to build the program from source code so it will be compatible with your system, because anything Arch is changing constantly and you can have different versions of a lot of different things. And because the AUR is user driven, it can have a little more risk than a normal distribution repository. It can be not terrible, but little of your own risk. But sometimes though, you need the latest greatest program and you need to get it from the AUR, or you want it because building is simplified. You don't have to go through and untar it and go through all the steps. It's the package build method is fairly automated. Now the article in the show notes shows you how to install Paru, but it comes already installed in CachyOS, and this is how I got it because I actually used it. The simplest way to use the program is Paru space program you want. It will then search and install a program. If it finds more than one, it will show you the options that you can pick from, and you may need to do a little searching to make sure you get the right name and the version you want. For example, I used it to install Folding at Home for my system, and as the normal Folding at Home is packaged for Debian and Red Hat, so I didn't have one I could get from the normal website. So I knew what I wanted, and I looked for FAH, which is the normal Folding at Home search term, and I found versions I didn't want. I had to look for the full name, Folding at Home with no spaces. That's how I got the right version. So, I mean, there's a little bit of, you kind of got to search and understand. And it just comes up with a menu that says, oh, here's 3 versions. Do you want 1, 2, or 3? And then it has information of like version and a bunch of other stuff. So you know what you're getting. It's not just, I think it's this version. It comes with a lot of details. So you'll understand what you're getting. Now, if you have a very specific program you want, it would be Paru, P-A-R-U space capital S program name. So it will just go, okay, this is exactly what this person wants. We're getting it. We're not going to show up the menu and give you options. You're getting this. If you have programs and you want to find updates, it's Paru space -Q, capital Q, lowercase ua. You can use capital S, lowercase ua to upgrade your packages. So the first one says, hey, you have these updates. The second one actually does update it. There are options to just download the package, not build it. You can have it find a package and have it only print the comments for you. So you can see if the package, when you find your package, is there an issue with it? Because sometimes there could be, because a lot of times it's fairly cutting edge software. So take a look at the article in the show notes, and you can see all the switches. I gave you most of them. But it basically makes installing from the AUR a lot easier and should handle all your install needs.
Very cool. I like it. I like these little tricks and tips for the various distros.
Yeah, and that's where earlier I said Zork was on there. So if you're on Arch, you can use that to get your Zork fix.
If you're on Arch, I'm not on Arch. If
you're on Arch,
I'm so proud of you, Jeff, for using an Arch-based distro for so long.
The only problem is he's got to tell us about it every time.
I use Arch, by the way.
Yep.
Well, it's so great because I get all these command line tips and stuff where, Debian, it's like, oh, we've already covered this or that. And it's like, whoa, there's some fresh ground here for stories that.
On Debian, everything just worked. On Arch, you got to do all these command lines.
When you run out of tips, what are you going to go to next?
Yeah, maybe I'll go back to Fedora or something. SUSE.
Yeah, there you go. SUSE sounds fun. All right. I've got a command line tip that is definitely tied to the open sourcing of Zork. So I asked myself, oh, well, is this available now on Fedora? And not yet is the answer. Well, surely it's out there somewhere. How do I get it? And there is a C. There's a couple of ways you can run it, but there is a C conversion of the original Zork code. And it's available. Of all places, the one that was quickest for me to get, it's available as a snap. So on my Fedora install, I just did sudo snap install Zork and then snap run Zork. And suddenly I was transported to the field in front of the house with the mailbox. And I opened the mailbox and I got a flyer out. And then I found the slightly ajar window and I climbed through the window into the house and I got the lantern. And that's about as far as I got into Zork. It's about as far as I've ever gotten into Zork. So maybe I have to take a few more minutes and play a bit further into it. But it's out there. And that was one of my first real interactions installing something with a snap that I was actually going to use. It just worked. No big surprise there. But yeah, if you want to get Zork and you don't want to compile it yourself and you don't want to do any of that, it is available as a snap as well.
And Jonathan using snaps, I'm the opposite of proud of you. So.
Disappointed. You're not mad, you're just disappointed.
Yeah, there we go.
Now that I'm not talking about snaps, Jonathan had to take up the torch.
Honestly, the way this went is I Googled, like, how do I install Zork on Fedora or Linux? I don't remember which one I Googled for. And the top hit was, here's the snap. Okay, fine. Whatever works. They work well. In reality, I am fairly laissez-faire, shall we say. I'm very easygoing. Like I don't have a whole lot of ideology about like which way I install a program. I don't care that much. App image, Flatpak, Docker container, whatever. Let's just make it work.
Yeah, I don't hate snaps as much as I pretend, but I do like to poke fun at Canonical and Ubuntu and snaps and all the things that everybody hates. Everything that everyone loves to hate.
Of course.
I like to pretend I hate them too.
Yep.
Yeah, and to me, it's I don't really have an ideology other than they're just fine.
Yep.
You know, it's not the big
it's not that big a
issue
deal
that some people make it out to be.
It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's now that we're closing the show up, let's let the guys get whatever they want to as their closing words. Get the last word on something, plug something. Jeff, what do you have for us?
Well, since Ken isn't here, I figured I better cover this. I have 3 links in the show notes for Humble Bundles. One of them is Linux Professional. So it covers a lot of the like sysadmin stuff, Kubernetes, administration stuff, things like that. So this is not geared to the home user. It's geared to the professional sysadmin. There is also a link in there for software architecture. So this is people really designing programs and going in deep to for complex software, how you architecture stuff. And the third one, which I really liked, and I'm probably actually going to get, is they also have a bundle for data engineering and science. So it goes into the tools you need for handling data.
Cool.
So the analysis part and how you can use certain languages to dissect and mathematical formulas for good data handling.
Yeah.
So now you've got some good reading, and I hope everyone has a great and wonderful week.
Absolutely. All right, Rob, you have anything?
Not really. So I'm just going to go with my usual. If you want to, if you like what I'm doing, you want to know more about me, you want to connect with me on those social medias, you can go to my webpage, Robert P, as in Patrick, or I don't know what else. Campbell.
Wait. What does the P stand for?
It does stand for Patrick.
Okay.
I was trying to be
lore dropped. You got a lore drop.
RobertPCampbell.com. If you go there, that's my website. Even if you search Rob Campbell Linux, Robert Campbell Linux, I think I usually pop up. So, and you'll find my site. On my site, there are links to my LinkedIn, my Twitter, my Blue Sky, my Mastodon, and a place to donate a coffee, it says. But you're just donating $5, $5 US for those outside. I don't know how hard it is for anyone to donate outside of the US. I don't know. Why don't you try to let me know? And since Jeff didn't have a poem for you like he's normally supposed to do, he dropped the ball on that one. I don't have one either. Have a good week, everyone.
Let's see.
I did have a poem. I've got poems ready that I just thought, well,
next time. You already lost your turn.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, I'm disappointed that the AI did not try to write a limerick for me.
Okay, here I'll give you a quick one. Roses are red. My server is gray. I'm a computer nerd. Don't expect me to rhyme.
That's great. All right, appreciate it. Thank you guys for being here. It's been a lot of fun. All right, if you want to find more of me, there's of course Hackaday. That is where Floss Weekly lives these days. That's also where my security column goes live every Friday morning, except I think we're going to take a couple of weeks off around the holidays, because I really don't want to have to write a column on Thanksgiving or Christmas. That just does not sound like fun. I love my readers, but not that much. But yeah, otherwise, we'd love to have you come and check out what we're doing there at Hackaday. There's also, if you want to follow my stuff, there is the TWiT D&D adventure. We wrapped up the second, and for the one shot at least, the final adventure in that. And I saw that part one went public on the TWiT YouTube channel. So even those folks that are not in the club can go and check that out. It was a lot of fun, so you can go and see that. If you want to see more D&D from TWiT, make sure and let us know. I had a lot of fun with it. I'd be up for more. And if you want to see more, let the network know. All right. Other than that, thank you everyone for being here. We appreciate it. Whether you watch or listen, whether you get us live or on the download, we thank you very much. And we will see you next time on the Untitled Linux Show.